You know, one of these days, I think I'm just going to start Kings this week with a big musical number. I think that would be pretty cool. You know, get some pyro, some background dancers, a band, get Charlie Black to sing, you know, add some production value to this weekly series. But today is not that day. So back to our regularly scheduled intro. Welcome back to Kings This Week. My name is Jordan Kiss, and the Kings very busy over the last 7 days, of course, coming off a 3-game road trip on the Lower Mainland. But before we get into our weekend recap, we'll start with a couple roster moves the Kings made right before they hit the road, which is how we'll start off our show. Now, before the Kings headed out on their 3-game trip, they made a trade as well as signing. First off, trade in forward Colin McDougall to the Navan Grads of the Central Canadian Hockey League in exchange for future considerations. McDougall joined the team in the offseason, played in 12 games for the Kings, collecting 2 goals and 2 assists. Now, to fill the open roster spot, the Kings signed forward Turner Richards, who started the year with the Cowichan Valley Capitals, played in 9 games for the Caps, collecting 3 assists in those games. He is originally from Minoka, Wisconsin, and is actually another alum of Shattuck St. Mary's, which brings now the total to 5 Shattuck players here on the Kings, as Richards did play a couple seasons with Noah Eyre, Anthony Yu, and Will Jones. Now, on Friday, the Kings kicked off a 3-game Lower Mainland swing with their first game against the Eagles this season. The Eagles coming to this one of the top teams in the BCHL with a 10-2 record, while the Kings were coming off their first home win of the season after a 6-3 victory against the Langley Rivermen. And early on, the Eagles showed why they were one of the top teams in the BCHL. Just 2 minutes in, Logan Lorenz scoring the opening goal, as that would open the floodgates for the Eagles, who would go on to score 4 more goals in that first period to take a 5-0 lead after 20, and in the second they would continue on to roll. Logan Lorenz, another early goal in the second, and later on in the period, former King Ethan Reisterer burning his former team to make it 7-0 Eagles, which would end up being the final score, as the Kings would be shut out for the second time in 3 games. Now, on Saturday, the Kings will look to bounce back as they took on the Coquitlam Express for the 3rd time this season. It was the Express taking the first 2 meetings at the Hap Parker Arena, but the Express were coming into this one losing their last 6 games, but they would get off to another early start here against the Kings. Just over 2 minutes in, Gavin Giesbrecht, his 8th of the season, putting in the rebound as he would give the Express the 1-0 lead. Now, Giesbrecht would do the Kings a favor just a few minutes later, as he would hit Marcus Dashevsky here, and it would receive a 5-minute major and a game misconduct for checking from behind, which would send the Kings to a 5-minute major power play, which they took full advantage of. First off, Jack Blanchett, cutting down the right side, would put one past Adam Manchi for his 4th of the season, his 3rd goal on the power play to tie it up 1-1. And then just under a minute later, Dylan Hewlett with the point shot. It would hit Anthony Lucarelli in front. He would find the loose puck, put it over the glove of Manji to give the Kings a 2-1 lead on Lucarelli's 3rd goal of the season. Now, later on in the period, the Express would answer back with on a power play of their own. Mirko Budazzoni with just a great shot here from the right circle, beating Callum Metzen over the shoulder to tie the game up 2-2. But at the end of the period, the Kings would get another one back. Anthony Lucarelli, his 2nd of the period, once again going over the glove of Manji to give the Kings a 3-2 lead after 20 minutes. Now, in the second period, the Kings would try to make some early noise. Dylan Hewlett with a great move here to find Parker Lalonde at the side of the net, but they're denied by the pad of Adam Manji as it remained a 3-2 Kings lead. Now, the Express would tie the game 6:39 in. Mateo Dixon using his speed to get past the Kings defense, firing one past Cal Metzen for his 10th of the year, as it was now 3-3. Then the Express would take a 4-3 lead. 12:49, a puck off the end glass, finding Mirko Budazzoni in the slot. Pretty much had an open net to shoot out. Made no mistake, his 2nd of the game, as the Express led 4-3 after 40 minutes. Now, the third period would be a very close period. The Kings would get 1 goal goal would be a big one. It was Anthony Yu with the long shot, Ryder ringer there to deflect it in for his second of the season, as it made the score 4-4, which would be the score at the end of regulation, as this game would need overtime, but OT would solve nothing and it would go all the way to a shootout, and it'll be Mirko Botazzoni leading things off, already 2 goals on the night, taking his time here and just able to outweight Metzen and tuck one by the pad to give the Express the 1-0 lead in the shootout. Now the next handful of shooters would be denied, and it was come all the way down to Park Lalonde, the final shooter of the third round, needing a goal to keep this alive for the Kings. He would try to make a move in tight, but it was denied by the pad of Manji, as the Express would take this one 5-4 in a shootout. It would be the first shootout loss for the Kings this season. Final shots in this game were 49-41 for Coquitlam, as Cal Metzen making 45 saves in the shootout loss. Now on Sunday, the Kings would wrap up their 3-game mainland trip with another game against the Langley Rivermen. It would be their third meeting over the last 8 days, as these two teams split a doubleheader here at the Hap Parker Arena the weekend prior. Now it would be a good start for the Kings in this one, as they would outshoot the Rivermen 5-0 early on, but about 7 minutes in, Noah Air would take a hit along the boards. It would knock the glass loose and out of place, which resulted in quite a long delay trying to get it fixed, and it was a delay that seemed to benefit the Langley Rivermen, as they would score shortly after play resumed here. Vitaly Levy, the puck bouncing off him after just a weird sequence, as he would score his 10th to give the Rivermen the 1-0 lead. And then about 50 seconds later, Andrei Kovacevic wiring a wrist shot over Metzen here to give Langley the 2-0 advantage, as they scored 2 goals on their first 3 shots of the game. Now, later on in the first, the Kings thought they got a goal here, as it was off Anthony Lucarelli, who appeared to score his 3rd goal in 2 games, but it was eventually waved off due to a high stick. But the Kings would get that goal back at 12:34. Jack Blanchett, using his patented slap shot that we've seen so many times now, to one time at home off the clean face-off win by Carter McNarland. That would be his 5th goal of the season, as he is now tied for the team lead in goals with 5 alongside Anthony Yu. And then the Rivermen would have a 2-1 lead after the first period. Now, in the second period, the Kings would tie it up, and they would get it from an unlikely source. Dylan Hewlett with the shot from a point here. It would take a deflection in front and go into the back of the net, as that would be Dylan Hewlett's first goal since the pod season, as that goal coming 3:40 in. But the Rivermen would add 2 more in the second period. First off, Matthew Liu here on the rush. That would result in his first BCHL goal. Then at 17:51 on the power play, Keaton Oakley getting another favorable bounce off the end wall, jamming it home at the side of the net for his 4th goal of the season, his 3rd goal against the Kings, as the Rivermen took a 4-2 lead after 2 periods, as that would end up being the final score in this one, as the Kings would only collect 1 point on their 3-game mainland trip. But the Kings, again, outshooting their opponents here, going 44 shots towards Ajit Gadar, who made another 40-save performance against the Kings. But the big story here in this one is the Kings power play going 0-4 against the Rivermen. Now this weekend, the Kings are back on the road for 2 more games before they return home for an 8-game homestand. It'll get started this Friday in Salmon Arm, as the Kings take on the Silverbacks for the 2nd time this season. It was the Backs winning the first meeting at the BCHL Showcase by a score of 3-1, as the Silverbacks come into this one with a record of 9-5-0-1, and are a very good team at home ice at the Shaw Center with a 6-1 record. That game is set to start at 7 o'clock. Then on Saturday, the Kings will head down to Chilliwack to take on the Chiefs for the first time this season. The Chiefs, not a hot start to the season themselves, 4-9-0-1 on the year. And the opposite of the Salmon Arm Silverbacks on home ice, so they're still looking for their first win with a record of 0-3-1 at the Coliseum. Now the Kings are expected to receive a big boost to the lineup this weekend, as Nick Briquetta is slated to make his return after being cleared to play. Now he's missed the last 7 games due to injury, but before he went down, he was one of the top players on this Kings team, leading the team in points with 9 points in 9 games, as he's going to look to return to form early on and help the Kings get back to their winning ways. So after this weekend, the Kings will return home for the, as mentioned, 8-game homestand. It'll get started next weekend, November 18th and 19th, against the Victoria Grizzlies. And again, if you don't know, that is going to be Parents Weekend here at the HAP, as the players' parents will be in town to cheer on their boys. It'll be a 7 o'clock start on Friday, the 18th, and on Saturday, the 19th, it will be a 5 o'clock start. Then the following weekend, the Friday, the Kings will take on the Nanaimo Clippers. That is a 7 o'clock start. Then the next day, on Saturday, they would take on the reigning Fred Page Cup champions and so far undefeated Penticton Vees. That will be a 7 o'clock start as well. Then the calendar will flip over to December, and they'll kick off the December schedule Friday, December 2nd, as they host the Merritt Centennials. That is another 7 o'clock start. Then the next day on the Saturday, it'll be a 5 o'clock start as the Kings take on the Cowichan Valley Capitals for the first time this season. Then the following weekend will wrap up the 8-game homestand, as they'll have a doubleheader against the Surrey Eagles. Again, Friday, Saturday, both games at 7 o'clock. And that will also wrap up the home schedule for the calendar year of 2022. So get your tickets ahead of time. Don't wait in the lines during the games. Get them ahead of time online at tickets.powellriverkings.com for a huge 8-game homestand. Now, November 18th won't only mark the return home for the Kings, it would also mark the return of the 7th Player of the Game program, sponsored by the Cooperators and Westview agencies. If you have a child that is registered in minor hockey and is 12 years of age or younger, they can be part of the Kings starting lineup. They'll be able to skate out onto the ice with the Kings at the start of the game, stand on the blue line for the national anthems, and be introduced as part of the Kings starting lineup. An awesome experience for any kid. So if you want to register your child, you can go to powellriverkings.com/7th player. And there we go. That's it. It's another edition of Kings This Week complete. As always, thank you very much for joining me. There is a new episode of Kings of the Castle podcast available to listen and download if you wish to do so. You can go to powellriverkings.com/Kings podcast to listen. This episode features Max Puffin and Anthony Lucarelli. Then tomorrow we'll be dropping another new episode of the podcast, this time featuring Marcus Deshevsky, as he talks about his experience playing for Team Canada at the Maccabee Games last summer. Now, if you don't know what those are, you'll just have to tune into the podcast to find out. So stay tuned on the Kings social media channels tomorrow afternoon when we'll officially release the podcast. Kings again on the road this weekend for 2 games. Friday in Salmon Arm against the Silverbacks at the Shaw Center. That is a 7 o'clock puck drop. Then on Saturday, a 6 o'clock puck drop from the Chilliwack Coliseum as the Kings take on the Chiefs. So as always, all games will be available on the Kings Broadcast Network. So my name is Jordan Kiss. Until next time, go Kings go.